The Terror of the Void. Hunters. The twin suns of Meridian cast their golden light across the crystal spires of New Harmony, capital city of the Crystalline Federation. For 3,000 years these majestic beings had lived in peace, their cities growing like living gems from the planet's surface. The Crystallines had mastered energy manipulation centuries ago, channeling starlight itself to power their civilization. Their ships moved like dancing prisms through space, beautiful and elegant, designed for exploration rather than war. Council leader Zixara stood in the observation chamber of the orbital station, her crystalline body refracting the sunlight into countless rainbows. The Crystalline Federation had expanded to 12 systems, each world a testament to their peaceful philosophy. Trade routes flourished, knowledge was shared freely, and conflicts were resolved through careful negotiation rather than violence. That morning, everything changed. The first sign of trouble came from the outer sensor networks. Chief Navigator Velthar's usually calm harmonics cracked with tension as he reported to the Council. The readings made no sense. Massive objects were dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge, but they registered as voids on the sensors, as if they were made of darkness itself. Within minutes, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The approaching fleet consisted of ships unlike anything in the known galaxy. Each vessel was a twisted nightmare of black metal and pulsing red energy, designed to strike terror into anyone who saw them. These were the Void Hunters, a nomadic fleet that had been devouring civilizations for over a millennium. War Chief Thraknor commanded the Void Hunter armada from his massive flagship, the Devourer. Standing 3 meters tall, his reptilian form was covered in scales that seemed to absorb light. His yellow eyes burned with the hunger of a predator that had never known defeat. The Void Hunters were scavengers who had perfected the art of conquest. They would arrive at a system, crush all resistance within hours, then strip the worlds of everything valuable before moving on to the next target. The Crystalline Defense Fleet moved to intercept with characteristic grace. 50 beautiful ships, their hulls glowing with stored starlight, formed elegant formations as they approached the invaders. Admiral Kindal had commanded the fleet for 2 centuries, but had never faced anything more threatening than pirates or smugglers. The crystalline way of war emphasized precision and efficiency, using focused energy beams to disable rather than destroy. Thraknor watched the approaching defenders with amusement. These crystal creatures were even more naive than most. Their ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, broadcasting their intentions with every maneuver. They actually seemed to be trying to communicate rather than attack. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 37 minutes. The Void Hunter quantum disruptors tore through crystalline shields like tissue paper. Where the crystallines fired precise beams meant to disable, the Void Hunters unleashed waves of destructive energy that simply erased matter from existence. One by one, the beautiful crystal ships shattered and fell silent. Admiral Kindal's flagship was among the last to fall. As his ship's energy core destabilized, he managed to send one final message to the planet below. The quantum disruptors were unlike anything the Federation had encountered. They didn't just destroy matter, they unraveled the very bonds that held atoms together. Nothing in their technology could defend against such weapons. The attack on Meridian Prime began immediately after the fleet's destruction. Thraknor had refined his tactics over centuries of conquest. First, his ships would target the planet's major cities with precision strikes, eliminating government centers and military installations. Then they would systematically destroy infrastructure, while herding the surviving population into designated areas for evaluation. The crystal spires of New Harmony, which had stood for millennia, cracked and fell as the Void Hunter bombardment began. Zixara and the surviving council members huddled in the emergency bunkers deep beneath the city, listening to reports of devastation pouring in from across the planet. The outer colonies had gone silent one by one. The orbital factories were nothing but debris. Even the sacred crystal gardens where new crystalline life began had been reduced to glowing dust. In desperation, the crystalline survivors activated their most powerful long-range communications array. If their Federation was doomed, perhaps they could warn other civilizations about the threat approaching them. The quantum messages went out in all directions, carrying details about the Void Hunter's weapons and tactics to anyone who might be listening. One of those messages reached a small blue world on the outer rim of the galaxy, a world that the galactic databases listed as primitive and unimportant, a world called Earth. The message was intercepted by Captain Maria Santos as she conducted routine patrols in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Her ship, the Defiant, was officially listed as a mining vessel, but its true purpose was far more significant. For 50 years, Earth's governments had been secretly preparing for this moment, the day when humanity would encounter a threat from beyond the stars. Captain Santos was a third-generation officer in the Terran Defense Corps, an organization that officially didn't exist. Her grandmother had been among the first to argue that humanity needed to prepare for the possibility of hostile alien contact. While Earth's public space program struggled to establish a presence on Mars, the TDC had been building something far more ambitious. The crystalline distress signal was decoded by Earth's quantum computers within hours. The technical specifications of the Void Hunter weapons were analyzed, their tactical patterns studied, and their weaknesses identified. Captain Santos found herself assigned to a mission that would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of the entire galaxy. Her orders were simple: make contact with the surviving crystallines, assess the threat, and if necessary, reveal humanity's true capabilities to the universe. The journey to the Meridian system took 3 days using Earth's experimental fold space drives. These engines didn't move ships through normal space, but instead folded reality itself, allowing vessels to step from one point to another instantly. It was technology that would revolutionize galactic travel if humanity survived long enough to share it. When Captain Santos arrived at Meridian, she found a system in ruins. The once beautiful worlds had been stripped of their crystal formations, leaving behind barren rocks. Debris from the crystalline fleet floated through space like a metallic graveyard, but deep beneath Meridian Prime's surface, she detected faint life signs. The first contact between humans and crystallines took place in a damaged bunker beneath what had once been New Harmony. Zixara was among the few hundred survivors from a population that had once numbered in the billions. Her crystalline form was cracked and dim, her usual radiant colors faded to pale pastels. Captain Santos removed her helmet and breathed the recycled air of the bunker, a gesture of trust that wasn't lost on the traumatized crystallines. She was a tall woman with dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen enough combat to understand the weight of leadership. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. The exchange that followed would be remembered by both species for generations. Zixara, speaking through a translation device her people had quickly constructed, described the horror of the Void Hunter attack, the quantum disruptors, the systematic destruction, the complete helplessness of her people against such overwhelming force. Captain Santos listened carefully, asking technical questions about the enemy weapons and tactics. Her responses puzzled the crystallines. This human seemed remarkably well informed about military matters for someone from a supposedly primitive species. When Zixara asked about Earth's defensive capabilities, Santos was honest about humanity's situation. Earth was indeed new to interstellar travel, she explained. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light capability 50 years ago, but they had not been idle during that time. Humanity had been preparing, watching, and learning about the galaxy they were about to enter. The revelation that Earth possessed a hidden fleet of advanced warships seemed impossible to the crystallines. These beings, who still used chemical rockets for their public space program, claimed to have technology that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. But as Captain Santos shared technical specifications and tactical doctrines, Zixara began to understand that humanity's approach to space warfare was unlike anything her people had imagined. The conversation was interrupted by alarms from the bunker's sensors. More ships were approaching too. The system. The sensor readings matched the signatures of Void Hunter vessels. Thraknor had returned to complete his conquest of Meridian. Captain Santos activated her communication system and sent a coded message toward the outer system. The reply came back within seconds, confirming what she had hoped. Earth's fleet was already in position. As the Void Hunter ships moved into orbit around Meridian Prime, Preparing to finish stripping the planet of its remaining resources, they detected the small human ship hiding in the shadow of the planet's largest moon. Thraknor studied the readings with mild curiosity. The vessel was tiny compared to his dreadnoughts, and its weapon signature was almost non-existent. Perhaps these humans were refugees from another conquest, or maybe scavengers hoping to pick through the ruins. Either way, they would make interesting specimens for his collection. He ordered his ships to surround the human vessel and prepare for boarding. But as the Void Hunters closed in, Captain Santos did something unexpected. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, she opened a communication channel to the entire enemy fleet. Her message was simple and direct. This system was now under the protection of the Terran Defense Corps. The Void Hunters had 60 seconds to withdraw or face the consequences. Thraknor's laughter echoed through the communication channel. A single primitive ship was threatening his entire armada. The audacity was almost admirable. He was about to order his gunners to vaporize the insolent humans when his tactical officer reported something impossible. New contacts were appearing on sensors throughout the system. Not dozens but hundreds of ships, materializing from what appeared to be empty space. The human fleet had been there all along, hidden by technology that made them completely invisible to Void Hunter sensors. When Earth unleashes hell, War Chief Thraknor stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. The sensors showed over 300 human vessels surrounding his fleet in a perfect three-dimensional formation. Impossible. His scouts had detected only primitive chemical rockets from this species. Their homeworld showed no signs of advanced industry or military construction. Yet here they were, their ships unlike anything in the Galactic database. The human vessels were sleek and angular, their hulls seeming to shift between different configurations as he watched. They moved with impossible precision, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others in a display of tactical coordination that suggested a level of technology far beyond what should have been possible. Captain Santos's voice cut through the silence on all frequencies. "War Chief Thraknor of the Void Hunters, you have 60 seconds to begin withdrawing from this system. This is your only warning." The War Chief's yellow eyes blazed with fury. No prey species had ever dared threaten him. The Void Hunters had conquered 1,000 worlds, each victory adding to their reputation for invincibility. These humans, whatever technology they possessed, would learn the price of defying the galaxy's apex predators. "Primitive mammals," Thraknor broadcast back, "you dare threaten the Void Hunters? We have devoured civilizations that spanned star systems. Your pathetic fleet will be debris within the hour, and your homeworld will burn for your insolence." Admiral Chen Wei listened to the exchange from the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's flagship hidden among the asteroid belt. Chen was a small man with graying hair and calm eyes that had seen every major engagement in humanity's secret war preparations. He had spent 30 years developing the tactics that would soon be tested against a real enemy for the first time. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy commander has declined our generous offer. Execute Protocol Omega-7. Remember your training. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." The battle began with the Void Hunters doing exactly what human analysts had predicted they would do. Thraknor ordered his quantum disruptors to target the largest human ships, expecting to watch them disintegrate just as the crystalline vessels had done. But when the crimson beams of destructive energy reached their targets, the human ships simply weren't there anymore. Every single human vessel had shifted position at exactly the moment the weapons fired. Not random evasion, but perfectly calculated movement that placed each ship exactly where the weapons couldn't reach them. It was as if the humans had known where every shot would go before the Void Hunters had even fired. Dr. James Mitchell, observing from his research ship Breakthrough, smiled with satisfaction as he watched his fold space technology in action. Humanity hadn't just developed faster-than-light travel. They had learned to manipulate space-time itself in ways that made their ships nearly impossible to target. Human vessels could shift between dimensions, phase through solid matter, and appear anywhere within a light-minute radius instantly. But the real revolution wasn't in the technology. It was in how humans used it. Thraknor watched in growing alarm as the human fleet began to move. Instead of forming the traditional battle lines that every species in the galaxy used, the human ships flowed like liquid around his formations. They struck from impossible angles, their weapons adapting in real time to penetrate Void Hunter defenses. The human arsenal was unlike anything the war chief had encountered. Instead of trying to overpower Void Hunter shields with brute force, human weapons analyzed the energy signatures and simply changed frequency to pass through them. Missiles that had seemed primitive suddenly demonstrated the ability to phase through armor and detonate inside enemy ships. Energy beams that appeared weak somehow found structural weaknesses that conventional sensors couldn't detect. But perhaps most disturbing of all was how the humans fought as a single entity. Every ship in their fleet shared information instantaneously through quantum entanglement networks. When one human vessel identified a target, every other ship in the fleet knew about it immediately. When one captain developed a new tactic, the entire fleet adopted it within seconds. The Void Hunters found themselves fighting not 300 individual ships, but one massive organism with hundreds of bodies and a single devastatingly intelligent mind. Captain Santos coordinated the assault from her position near Meridian Prime, but she wasn't giving orders in the traditional sense. The human fleet operated on what they called distributed command authority. Every captain was empowered to make tactical decisions, and those decisions were instantly shared with every other ship through their quantum networks. The result was a form of warfare that seemed almost alive. Human formations flowed and adapted like schools of fish, impossible to predict or counter. Just when Void Hunter gunners thought they had a firing solution, their targets would shift into new configurations that made their weapons useless. Thraknor ordered his ships to close to ramming distance, hoping to use their superior mass to crush the smaller human vessels. It was a tactic that had worked against dozens of other species, but when his dreadnoughts moved to attack, they found themselves trying to ram ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human vessels phased in and out of normal space, sometimes existing as solid matter, sometimes becoming pure energy that passed harmlessly through Void Hunter hulls. The enemy couldn't ram what they couldn't touch, and they couldn't shoot what they couldn't predict. The tide of battle turned completely when the humans demonstrated their most devastating weapon. Not a gun or a missile, but something far more dangerous. They began to hack into Void Hunter computer systems through their own weapon targeting networks. Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's leading expert in quantum computing warfare, had spent years studying intercepted alien communications. She had identified vulnerabilities in Void Hunter technology that the enemy didn't even know existed. As the battle raged, her cyber warfare programs infiltrated enemy ships through their own sensors, turning their systems against them. Void Hunter ships began firing on each other as their targeting computers were compromised. Navigation systems failed, sending vessels spinning out of control. Most terrifying of all, the quantum disruptors that had seemed invincible began to overload, their own destructive energy turning inward. Thraknor watched his fleet dissolve around him with growing horror. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled, and the others were fleeing in disorder. These humans hadn't just defeated the Void Hunters. They had made their technology look primitive and obsolete. But the worst humiliation was yet to come. As his flagship limped away on emergency power, Captain Santos appeared on his communication screen one final time. "War Chief," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "you're going to deliver a message for us. Every species in this galaxy is going to know what happened here today. The age of the Void Hunters is over. Earth has taken responsibility for protecting the innocent from predators like you." She paused, and when she continued, her words carried a promise that made Thraknor's blood run cold. "And if we ever detect Void Hunter ships approaching a populated system again, we won't be as merciful as we were today. The next time you threaten civilians, we'll demonstrate why humans earned the nickname Terra's Devils among the species we've already contacted." The war chief's flagship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the shattered remnants of his once mighty armada. Behind them, the human fleet began the work of rebuilding what the Void Hunters had destroyed. In the bunkers beneath Meridian Prime, Zixara emerged into sunlight for the first time in days. Above her, human construction ships were already beginning to restore the crystal formations that had been stripped from her world. Other vessels worked to repair the orbital infrastructure, their fold space technology allowing them to move materials instantly from Earth's manufacturing centers. Captain Santos stood beside the crystalline leader, both of them watching as the first new crystal spire began to grow from the restored soil of New Harmony. "Your people saved us," Zixara said, her voice harmonics filled with wonder. "But why? We have nothing to offer in return for such generosity." Captain Santos smiled, looking up at the stars where human ships patrolled the system's borders. "Zixara, you're wrong about that. You have something incredibly valuable to offer. You have the wisdom of a species that chose peace over war, and we're going to need that wisdom in the days ahead." She turned to face the crystalline leader, her expression growing serious. The Void Hunters were just one threat among many. There are other predator species out there, other fleets that prey on the innocent. Humanity is strong enough to fight them, but we're not wise enough to know when fighting isn't the answer. The alliance that formed between Earth and the Crystalline Federation would become the foundation for a new order in the galaxy. Humanity provided the military strength and technological innovation needed to stand against the darkness between the stars. The Crystallines offered the diplomatic wisdom and peaceful philosophy that prevented that strength from becoming tyranny. Together they began to contact other civilizations, offering protection to those who needed it and building a coalition dedicated to ensuring that no species would ever again face extinction alone. As news of the Void Hunters' defeat spread across the galaxy, other predator species began to reconsider their plans for conquest. The humans had demonstrated something that changed the entire balance of power among the stars. They had shown that a species could be both incredibly dangerous and utterly dedicated to protecting the innocent. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they carried the blue and white banner of a small world called Earth.